Our next step along the way is a bit of an adventurer's stop. It's kind of an Indiana Jones kind of place. It's the Spring of Gihon and Hezekiah's Tunnel and the Pool of Siloam. Now this is our home base aerial of Jerusalem. And down at the bottom you can see where we just were at the with the pink arrow and the circle at the Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu. Now, let's get back to our home base aerial and review a little bit of where we've gone. Of course, the blue circle and the yellow outline are Herod's temple over there at Jaffa Gate. And then we've been to St. Peter Gallicantu in the red square. Now we're going to head down more of the Siloam Valley to the Pool of Siloam, Hezekiah's Tunnel, and the Spring of Gihon, and David's City. There's the Church of Gallicantu, and we'll head right down to that blue area, which is the Pool of Siloam. Now the Pool of Siloam sits right in the southern end of the Tyropian Valley. The purple shows the Tyropian Valley. And while we're here, we might as well look also at the Kidron Valley to the east of the Temple Mount. These two valleys converge down right about where that blue circle is. Now, this is the first century model of the Pool of Siloam. And there's a big old giant on the right there in the model. But this picture shows the Tyropian Valley well from the south, looking straight up to the towers right at the very north end of Antonia Fortress. And of course, now there's the blue circle showing the Antonia Fortress. That pretty much goes the length of the Tyropian Valley, from the Pool of Siloam at the bottom up to the Antonia Fortress. Let's bring that up a little bit. Now, this valley on the left was almost completely filled in since the first century. And especially when we look at the Temple Mount, we'll see why. The destruction of the temple by Titus, they just threw everything down there. But it's been built over, and the destructed ruins are just covered and buried, and everything you see there from the Pool of Siloam is they've tried to reconstruct this as best they can, but it's covered. Now, this Siloam pool has been identified with the Birkat Silwan in the lower Tyropian Valley, to the southeast of the Hill of Zion. The water which flows into this pool intermittently by a subterranean channel springs from the Fountain of the Virgin. The length of the channel, which has several windings, is 1,700 feet. Through the direct distance is only 1,100 feet. The pool is 50 feet, 3 feet in length from north to south. It's 18 feet wide and 19 deep. The water passes from it by a channel cut in the rock into the gardens below. Now, I've not seen these gardens below myself. They're more recent excavations in the last 10 years. But boy, I would love to see them if I were to return to Jerusalem. The purple shows the Tyropian Valley again, just a better view of it. And then, of course, there's the Kidron Valley. The two valleys converge with the temples of the Abdamian kings right in the middle, also called David's City. Well, we really get familiar with these geographical parts, aren't we? Now, what does the Pool of Siloam have to do in Scripture? In John 8, we have an account of Jesus' healings. It says, "I tell you the truth," Jesus answered, "before Abraham was born, I am." At this, they picked up stones to stone him. But Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. And we've seen where the temple is, right there. As he went along, he saw a blind man from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus. Having said this, he spit on the ground and made some mud with the saliva and put it in the man's eyes. "Go," he told them, "wash in the pool of Siloam." This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging him asked, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Now, Jesus in this passage was up at the Temple Mount. He came out of the Temple Mount because they were going to throw stones at him. And somewhere down in here, in this city, he met the blind man. And he said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." And that's the place he went, down the Tyropian Valley, likely, to go do that. Now this is a picture of the same area. This is called the Ophel, and you can see the Temple Mount. But first we're going to highlight the Mount of Olives. Now the Ophel, with the Temple Mount at the top of the Ophel, is formed where two valleys converge, the Tyropian Valley on the left and the Kidron Valley on the right. The Ophel is also called the City of David. To the left of the bottom tip of the Ophel is the location of the Pool of Siloam. Beyond and behind the Temple Mount is Mount Scopus, the modern location of Hebrew University. The green patch to the right of the Temple Mount is the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. In the first century, from this perspective, you would have seen Solomon's porticos where the Silver Dome Mosque is, the temple about where the Dome of the Rock is, the Antonian Fortress just past the dome and to the left. Now let's highlight the Mount of Olives from this view. The arrow in the oval is pointing to the Garden of Gethsemane across from the Temple Mount. That's Mount Scopus with Hebrew University. Now, we'll take that picture and shrink it down a little bit, and we'll do a side-by-side comparison of the Ophel and Siloam and Temple Mount as we've seen in just previous slides. The blue circle is the Pool of Siloam. That's the Tyropian Valley in pink. There's the Kidron Valley in green. And the Temple Mount outlined in blue. Now, this is a closer look of an aerial view of the Temple Mount with the white highlighting the city of David. Once again, there's the Pool of Siloam, the excavation site, the ruins of it. The Tyropian Valley, which is not much of a valley today, not nearly as pronounced as the first century. The Kidron Valley, which is in the first century was 40 feet deeper. Let's take a side-by-side look here. Now this is going to show the Gihon Spring. This is a closer view of the Ophel from the East Gihon Spring view of the eastern slope of the Ophel from the village of Siloam across the valley. At the bottom of the picture is the Kidron. Now that's on the bottom right. I mean on the right side. That blue rectangle shows the southern walls of the old city. And that's the same view there of the southern walls. That blue arrow is pointing out where the Spring of Gihon is. Now, the Spring of Gihon is the source of the water for the Pool of Siloam. And then the blue arrow there, it says a triangular shadow in the bottom center of the picture beneath a double window obscures the steps leading down to the Gihon Spring. The building itself sits over the spring. The Gihon Spring, near the eastern base of the Ophel Hill, provides the ancient city's inhabitants with their nearest and most dependable source of fresh water. Springs such as this one, which continue flowing even through the driest summer months, were seen by the Hebrew psalmists and prophets to be direct gifts of Israel, God. Solomon was anointed at this spring by the prophet Nathan to symbolize God's blessing upon him. The name comes from a Hebrew word meaning a bursting forth, and is descriptive of the spring which is located in the Kidron Valley. It does not produce a steady flow, but gushes out at irregular intervals, twice a day in the dry season to 4 or 5 times in the rainy season. Water issues from a crack 16 feet long in the rock. At some point in the ancient past, a wall was built at the eastern end of the crack, diverting water into a cave at the other end. Now, we're going to do a side-by-side picture here of the picture we're just looking at in the bottom right, showing the Ophel and the Gihon Spring. On the left is an artist rendition. It's a cross-section or X-ray of the Ophel and an artist depiction of David's city, and with Solomon's temple at the top. This is likely the artist rendition of David's city when Solomon was king, or after, just shortly after, because there's Solomon's temple, which David never saw. It was up to his son to build. Now the red hexagon points to where the Gihon spring is in both pictures. The blue hexagon shows the pool of Siloam in both pictures and both centuries. Now we back up with an older picture of the Ophel, but it's a higher elevation to show the track of Hezekiah's Tunnel. Now at the top is the Temple Mount, Solomon's Temple on the left, and the current modern view on the right. Looking again to show this new picture on the right is the spring of Gihon, and the blue is the pool of Siloam. The pathway that just appeared in blue is of Hezekiah's Tunnel in the cross-section picture. It follows the stream underground, about 1,750 feet long, or about 1/3 of a mile. Now watch on the right, because I'm going to show the stream path appear as it goes between the spring of Gihon, meanders through the mountain out to the pool of Siloam, 1,750 feet. Now we're going to go inside the spring on the right, and from the outside you go down these steps to this arched way, taking you subterranean down underground. And once inside and down the steps, you look back and you're inside the spring, looking back at the steps you just came down. This next picture is another way down to Hezekiah's Tunnel, which we're going to turn around and go through in the next picture. This is called Warren Shaft. It's an entrance from the top of the Ophel from a well, actually an ancient well. Let's bring up that entrance to the Gihon Spring. We'll look back at it. The entrance steps to the Gihon Spring there's 3 steps. They're probably built in the medieval period. They lead down to the Gihon Spring for the present level of the Kidron Valley floor. Over the centuries, rubble from the slopes of the Ophel Hill and Siloam have raised the level of the valley floor considerably. In the Jebusite period, before David, a shaft went from the spring to a pool into the city. Water jugs were let down into the pool through another vertical shaft, which we just saw, Warren Shaft. This probably was the way Joab entered the city and captured it for David in 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles. During the early Israelite occupation, water was collected outside the city walls in an open basin called the Upper Pool. An open aqueduct carried water from there to the Old Pool at the southern end of the city. Along this conduit, Isaiah confronted Ahaz, and later Sennacherib's army demanded the city's surrender. Before Sennacherib's arrival, Hezekiah plugged the aqueduct and dug his famous water tunnel, which we're just about to look at. This next picture shows Hezekiah's tunnel, which was from the bedrock between the Gihon spring and the pool of Siloam. This is a tall section of the tunnel. Hezekiah's tunnel was the most ambitious water tunnel before the Roman period, and the tunnel cut, as we said, 1,750 feet through the bedrock beneath Ophel Hill. It was undoubtedly built by Hezekiah at the end of the 8th century BC and is referred to in the Bible. The tunnel differs from the other known water systems in ancient Palestine, all of which were cut to allow people to descend from the higher ground to their city to the water source at a lower level. This tunnel slopes downward slightly, sway from the water source to allow water from the Gihon spring to flow through it to a pool at the lower end of the southern end of the hill. This would be the Siloam. The pool was inside the city wall where the tunnel was dug. Such a tunnel made engineering sense in Jerusalem because of the ancient city's unique topography. The town had been sited on a tapering ridge from the hill of Siloam, close by its east flank. The city's defense wall could not be placed at a low enough point along the east slope to enclose the precious spring of Gihon without exposing the city's defenders to fire from any enemy archers on the nearby higher ground of Siloam. At the south end of the ridge, however, walls could be carried lower. We can be certain that the Siloam pool, into which this tunnel carried the waters of Gihon, was protected by such a wall. We also can be certain that a part of this same project provision was made to seal off the original entrance to the spring from the Kidron Valley outside the city wall. This water is undoubtedly the project described by the biblical historians' preparations against the Assyrian siege in 701 BC. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded and encamped against the fortified cities, thinking to win them for himself. And when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and intended to fight against Jerusalem, he planned with his officers and his mighty men to stop the water of the springs that were outside the city. This same Hezekiah closed the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon and directed them down to the west side of the city of David. That's in 2 Chronicles 32 and 2 Kings 20. The first person to explore the tunnel in modern times was Edward Robinson, for which they call Robinson's Arch too, in 1838, though he did not correctly attribute it to Hezekiah. Now, the tunnel in that picture was a good 20, 30 feet high. In other sections, it's 6 feet high. And just depends on, I suppose, what they were inclined to be digging at the time, the location they were. And you can see in this picture that the hiker through the tunnel is in waist deep water. And by the way, you can do this. You can go to this tunnel and walk through it. This is the adventure. There's always water in it. When I was there, it was up to my ankle, a little higher up to my mid-calf. You can see the water level there is up to this hiker's waist. Now, this is an important part of the tunnel. This is a place called the Place of Joining. The place of join, it is clear from the direction of pick marks on the walls of Hezekiah's tunnel that the conduit was cut by two teams working towards each other from the spring end and at the pool end. Their task was complicated by the fact that neither segment was cut in a straight line. Scholars disagree as to why the tunnel took so many turns. One theory, concerning a large curve in the southern section, for instance, is that the tunnel cutters shifted directions to avoid the area of the royal tombs that were above them. Another is that they followed a natural crack in the rock through which water flowed. Whatever the reasons for the twisting courses followed by the two tunnel-cutting teams, they had the effect of throwing off the engineers as the two teams neared each other. Had not both teams changed their cutting directions sharply to the left as they came parallel, they could have passed each other without meeting. But they did change their direction several times in the face, as they nervously groped their way through the last 100 feet of bedrock that separated them, guided by the sound of the other team's pick blows. This picture shows the point where the two teams met. The many creases and folds on the walls of the tunnel here still provide dramatic, mute witness to the final twists and turns of those last tension-filled hours. We can still sense the relief the pickmen must have felt when they first broke through the rock to their companions on the other side, and the water first flowed together. This is a side-by-side coming to show the place of joining. Now on the bottom right is the cross-section of the tunnel we're looking at. The blue arrow shows the pickmen who started from the pool of Siloam end and started digging through the mountain that way. And the other blue arrow comes to meet. And the picture on the left is where they met, where their pickaxes came together. Now how do we know about all of this? Oh, there's the arrow, I'm sorry, showing the place of joining. We know all of this because of this. This is the place of joining stone, which now can be found in an archaeological museum in Istanbul, Turkey. The inscription on the stone was this. This inscription for the past now can be seen in an exhibit in the Archaeological Museum in Istanbul, Turkey. Now our timeline is going to help us to put this in perspective. Here's the cross-section of Hezekiah's Tunnel, and the date shows as 701 BC is when Hezekiah likely would have dug this tunnel. That's 700 years before Jesus. 2,700 years ago. And the exciting thing is to be able to go through the tunnel and realize that all that was happening as you come to that place of joining especially. Now let's just point out some of the parts of the tunnel real quick. This is the beginning of the Siloam channel stopped up by Hezekiah in the construction. This is the source of the Gihon spring. That's the beginning of Hezekiah's Tunnel, beginning from the Gihon spring end. There used to be a Jebusite tunnel there, and it just extended it from then more. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come, intent on making war against Jerusalem, he consulted with his officers and warriors about stopping the flow of the springs outside the city, and they supported him. A large force was assembled to stop up all the springs and the wadi that flowed through the land, for otherwise they thought the king of Assyria would come and find water in abundance. And that's a passage referring to Hezekiah's Tunnel in 2 Chronicles. Now this is the shaft to the surface that we mentioned before. It's called Warren Shaft. In 1867, Charles Warren discovered a vertical shaft and connecting tunnels through the bedrock, which had allowed the residents of ancient Jerusalem to reach the waters of the Gihon spring from behind the safety of the city walls, even though the spring itself was outside the wall. Since many scholars, after Warren's day, assumed that this water system was cut by the Jebusites before David's capture of the city, the system has been properly called both Warren Shaft and the Jebusite Shaft. The system consists of 6 elements: an entrance chamber at the level of the streets behind the city's defense wall, that's at the top of the hill, a stepped tunnel leading down into the bedrock beneath the city, 3, a sloping section of tunnel leading from there to the head of number 4, a vertical shaft which descends about 50 feet to 5, a small chamber at the level of the spring, and finally an irregular horizontal tunnel which carries the water of the spring to the small chamber at the base of the shaft. See, this was designed so that water carriers could go from the top of the hill you see and descend from the surface through the stepped and sloping tunnels down to the main shaft that you see there, where they could lower water containers to the collecting chamber of the base of the shaft. More or less a long tunnel of bedrock steps to a very steep 50-foot long well. Now, at one point in the Bible, this well was used to conquer this city. In 2 Samuel 5, it says, David and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought, "David cannot get in here." On that day, David said, "Anyone who conquers the Jebusites will have to use the water shaft to reach those lame and blind who are David's enemies." David had said, "Whoever leads the attack on the Jebusites will become commander-in-chief." So who steps up? Joab, son of Zeruiah, went up first, and so he received the command. David then took up residence in the fortress, and so it was called the City of David for the first time in history. Now, this is a worn shaft that they went up. This may be exactly the way David's warriors penetrated the Jebusite city defenses in 1000 BC. David and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You'll not get in here." And so that's really the story how David first conquered the city using that shaft to go up to the Temple Mount, well, what became the Temple Mount eventually when his son Solomon built it. But if you watch from the Pool of Siloam, you will see David's men go up the shaft to conquer the city. There's an orange pathway that shows the path that Joab took to climb up what we call Warren Shaft, or the Jebusite shaft, to conquer Jerusalem for David. So watch them as they go. Through the Jebusite shaft, up to the ladders and the steps, and up to the city where the Jebusite fortresses were, and they climbed right up, and from within the city were able to conquer it. Now, we'll back to halfway through or thereabouts in the tunnel. This is the point of meeting. Now, the Siloam inscription that we saw was now in a museum, was found not at the point of meeting because no one would ever read it. It was not designed for people to go through. This was a waterway for drinking. And so the inscription was placed at the end of the tunnel inside the city walls where someone would actually be able to see it. It was removed from there and taken to a museum like we described before. And this is what was called the Old Pool, which today we call the Pool of Siloam in the 1st century from the passage we read. Now the present pool. This is the picture I took of the pool in 1980, and is the pool that you will see today whether you walk through Hezekiah's Tunnel and emerge here or walk above through the city of David down the Siloam. There are clear remains around this pool from the Byzantine church built by Empress Eudocia. This is the pool that has long been visited as the Pool of Jesus' Miracle. Now, in the summer of 2004, just recently, work along the drainage pipe revealed a series of steps leading down to an adjacent garden. More of the pool has been revealed than ever before, including the northern corner of the steps. And that's an area I would love to see if I were to go back to Jerusalem to see the most recent excavations of the Pool of Siloam.